Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Daily AI Show. It is December 18th, 2025. I am Beth Lyons, and with me today is Andy Holliday. Maybe Karl's joining us, maybe not. We'll see who pops in later. But it is Thursday, and it is a good day to be on the Daily AI Show. Andy, do you have what's happening in your world? What's happening in AI for you?
Oh, well, the big news today is that Google is pulling the revenue rug out from under all its competition. So, you could have anticipated that this would happen at some point, but Google tried to be quiet about it and just pushed a release of Google 3.0 Flash and made
Mm-hmm.
that the standard across its platform pretty much. Now, you can still get the Gemini 3 Pro, but it's not going to have the same generous limits for free use or even for pro users who are paying the $20 a month. Um, so the default is going to be this smaller and more efficient, inexpensive model. Let me give you some numbers. So let's put this in comparison up against GPT 5.2, which is the
Mm.
major player out there, okay, alongside Gemini 3 Pro and Anthropic's Opus 4.5. So those are the three sort of massive frontier models that are out there. So Google just put out Gemini 3 Flash, and on the API side, the cost is 50 cents per million input tokens and
Wow.
$3 per million output tokens. Now that compares to $1.25 input and $10 output for GPT 5.2. So, you know, two plus times cheaper or less than half the cost of GPT 5 2.2 on the input side and a third of the cost of GPT 5.2 on the output side. So very inexpensive. It's like you can set up an API application in Google now and just let it run. Like that's dirt cheap out there. Now, are you compromising in terms of competent reasoning intelligence? No, they're offering unmatched intelligence and speed combination, right, for those prices. And here's just one that really like leapt out at me, which is Humanity's Last Exam. GPT 5.2 scores 34.5% on Humanity's Last Exam, a notoriously hard test for a
Mm-hmm.
model. Well, uh, little Gemini 3 Flash, that cheapo model, gets 34.
Oh,
Okay.
wow.
So it is so smart and so fast and so cheap. Now, one of the things I've noticed is I happen to be doing I'm in the throes when I have spare time of doing a simultaneous comparable implementation of a project with GPT 5.2 and also with Gemini 3 Pro.
Mm-hmm.
And what I found is I get tired waiting over there at ChatGPT. It's slow
It's
compared to
really
Gemini.
slow.
It's very slow. So it's like, oh, I have to go over there and I'm going to have to spend some, wait time. But now the difference will be even more stark. Gemini
Mm-hmm.
3 Flash is so much faster than Gemini 3 Pro. Things are going to be coming back in a blink. All right. So that's the big news out there. And almost every single newsletter has that as kind of lead story. Gemini 3 Flash. Try it out. And you don't have to go anywhere to try it out. You just use Gemini, and Gemini 3 Flash is what you're using at this point.
So that's interesting because I was using AI mode in a Google search today, and I felt like there was a little nuance missing. And I wonder if that is part of moving to Flash from Gemini Pro, which I think is what has been answering up till now. So
One other
that's
point is that, I become very satisfied working with Gemini 2.5 Pro in AI Studio. And Gemini 3 Flash is better than Gemini 2.5 Pro
Yeah.
on all the benchmarks. So it's just better. And so we're talking about nuances. Like there are subtle things that a really experienced user of AI like you might recognize differences in voicing and qualities of responses that are really subtle. Um, but overall, we're really not talking about big differences between the outputs of any of these models at this point.
No, and I feel like that's what the conversation is shifting to actually. That power users, are we power users of AI? I guess we are. We not only have techniques that we use for the individual models, we have scenarios in which we go to the individual models, right?
Yeah.
So what I experienced this morning was like super subtle. It just seemed to emphasize the beginning of the question that I asked as opposed to the whole question, and that has been my experience with Gemini Pro 3 Pro, was that it seemed to get the whole question, and this was back to the first 5 words that I used was really what it was using to answer the question.
That could have
So
been question, specific. You'd have to do a
absolutely.
real trial across a number of them to see if Gemini 3 Flash really does collapse backwards in some way compared to what you've experienced with Pro.
Well, and there's so much of these new models that are like fully good enough for anything that we would have wanted 6 months ago, right? We
Yeah,
would
to
like,
that point, I use GenSpark, and GenSpark's really satisfying in many ways for the comprehensive approach it takes to almost any project you throw at it. But underneath the hood, it's Claude 3.5 Sonnet. That's the
still.
that's the orchestrator there, yeah. But it's good, and I expect that GenSpark will ultimately swap that out for something more recent. But wow, a fully agentic system like that doesn't depend so much on the orchestrator itself, which was very competent to start with, but with the access to and the programming that the team does with all the tools that it can exploit.
Yep. Yeah. So I can see that Ethan Mollick. So I'm looking at what people are talking about on X today, and one of the things that I can see is that Ethan Mollick just posted something that I think is one of these conversations that we want to start having with our holiday gatherings. I know if you're the AI in the family, people roll their eyes when when you start to talk about it, but Ethan Malick's post, I think everyone, even the most cynical and informed among us, is going to fall for at least one AI faked story, photo, or post this coming year, and likely many more. This has bad implications, but wouldn't blame those taken in. And so this is one of those things. I was talking to some people yesterday about like what does AI readiness mean. Jyunmi and I were on the AI Readiness podcast with Kyle and Anne. And what I was talking about was AI readiness just as an inoculation for people, right? Like, how much do we need people I affectionately refer to as muggles to understand what's possible now so that they can then look at things with a critical mind? Andy, what do you think about that? You are still muted for us. I don't know.
Sorry about that.
There you
Okay.
go.
My reaction to that, my mind went off toward that most people who are forming opinions about AI have very little experience with it, and they have a superficial understanding that is colored by the fears that surround the disruptive capabilities of AI in our society. And so there's a growing kind of resistance to that and concern and fear, uh, which isn't down at the level of how do you how do you really understand the nature and quality of the outputs that AI is producing in
Mm.
the things that you're consuming, and there's a need for a mass education about just how profoundly difficult it's becoming to discern whether something is produced with, you know, provenance and resources that are unbiased, or whether it's something that has been using AI to create facsimiles that are really, um, designed to persuade and influence, and are in effect a deep fake of the real sources of information that we've depended on in societies before. So yeah, that's my level of thought about it. I'm concerned about the insufficiency of practical education about just how AI is being used around us now.
Right. And what is possible? I'm remembering Malcolm Gladwell's book Blink, right? Which was about that kind of intuitive decision making based on factors that aren't super conscious, like I'm going
Right.
through a checklist and therefore this is valid. And what we're talking about is deep fakes takes advantage of all of that, right? That's the decision. Like, well, of course it has this headline, of course it has, I've seen that person, that looks like them in the image. And how many of these things can't, are really easy to replicate right now.
Yeah.
So a story that I'm starting to see is about OpenAI's App Store,
Yeah. Yeah. I saw
and
that.
their SDKs. I am seeing people split. But anytime anybody talks about an app store, developers like pay attention, because Apple's App Store was such a huge thing that if you got in early, you had a huge advantage, right? So that's what I'm seeing. While people think, I don't know that this is going to work, there I'm also seeing people say, devs, particularly Nick Dobos of Grimoire and HiveMind and several other things since then, like not something we can ignore, right?
Yeah. Well, uh, they don't use the term app store, but that's the right analogy.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
what everybody else is using.
they say marketplace, like it's the open AI tools marketplace, and and they've already had something akin to that in the form of the navigable custom GPT listings that you can play with in custom GPTs. Um, but this is really kind of interesting because they've launched this marketplace with some major players, major application developers out there, and those are now accessible from within your AI. Like if
Hmm.
you're a ChatGPT user, well, then now you can access an application that's been designed around the OpenAI models and is integrated directly into the marketplace and into chat. So you can call on those applications in chat. What's new and is news today is that they've opened submissions to any developer who will
Hmm.
build on OpenAI models, and then they can publish their tools in the platform after a review process. And
Right.
so that's more like the App Store. So I'm not saying that's not the right term for it. It's just they're calling it something a little different, just so they are not confusingly similar to Apple, um, or Google Play
Right.
as the store, right? So you can submit your application that uses OpenAI models, now for listing, and it'll take some time. And the key here is that this is no longer going to be, oh, there's AI powered applications out there, and there's some searchable list like there's an AI for that or whatever. Now it's going to be there are applications in your AI, right? So if you have some desire to do some certain function, then you can look for in the marketplace an application that does exactly that and access it directly. And I believe that that there'll be, they haven't decided on how they're going to monetize those applications, but you'll probably have, as part of your account with OpenAI, a certain number of credits that can use applications And then if you want to use it more intensively, you'd have to be billed by OpenAI for those additional credits to be using those apps.
Right.
So
And
we're seeing the emergence of a broader application ecosystem around AI, and the point of entry for OpenAI users, which are the vast majority, but Google is taking their share, right? Like Google is catching up, but the vast majority of daily AI users are using OpenAI.
right. And it sort of feels so one of the apps applications that you can use is Photoshop, right? They partner with Adobe and you can do Photoshoppy things within ChatGPT. It feels like Google is just letting you do Photoshoppy things, hopefully within Nano Banana, right? Like OpenAI is partnering with names, and Google is trying to just make that happen within their thing. The real test for me, and I have not seen anyone talk about it, and I haven't had time to go and do it, is to do a real edit on an image. That's been a sticking point for Nano Banana. Sometimes just says it does the edit but doesn't, gives you the same image back, and Photoshop within ChatGPT, because Photoshop is such a high learning curve in order to find where the function you want to implement is, because it's all now buried in multiple menus. For power users, it's great. You can just remember what the letter is that you type on your keyboard. But this is exactly the scenario to be able to say, I want this image to have this adjustment. I don't care where the menu is or how you do it. Just make the thing happen within you. And that is exactly the promise of natural language interface, right?
Yeah, let me weave off of that a little bit to something that I wanted to point out, which is about OpenAI's product vision for AI. And a lot of that is being driven by the CEO of applications, which is Fiji Simo. We've talked about her on the show. Her name is relatively recent in emergence, but she's a really articulate spokesperson for OpenAI's future vision. And she's talking about what she calls a dynamic AI. So she's saying that ChatGPT is moving from being primarily text-based and conversational toward fully generative UI that brings the right components based on what you want to do. Now, couple this with the app ecosystem that's going to surround that, and the conversational voice or text interaction that you're going to have with ChatGPT is going to be able to say, hey, there's this application that can do exactly what we want to do. Shall I bring that in? Right.
Right.
And so she also says that visuals and images are really important to telling a story better than words alone. And ChatGPT should include them, and that's why they've come out with their image generator. And so here's a quote from Fiji. She says, when you need a quick answer or the next step lives in another tool, it should be right there. The ChatGPT should just bring it right in. So you now start to see in her vision for product and in the emergence of the application ecosystem, this marshaller, which is the model, bringing the solutions into the conversation rather than you having to invoke a tool or connect and do some integrations and so on.
Absolutely. And this is where things get tricky in some ways, because what we're practicing is either thinking less about it, right? You know what I want, do the thing. Or thinking more about it, here's what I want. I don't know what it's called, right? This is the green. This is the, right? Like, talk to me in the natural language to talk about the effects that I'm looking for, right? So maybe you have an example. A bunch of the things that I'm seeing is like, you don't ever need to make the commercial again. You can just put this in your product in an example commercial, and there it all goes. But you could actually have a conversation that says, I like this commercial. I like what it's doing. Name some of the techniques used in this commercial and talk to me. Ask me questions so that I understand what I like, and now we can make something that I'm looking for. And that continues to educate you and increase your skill. Whereas, put these three things in this and let's call it a day. There will be times where people just want to do that, right? Like, I need something for 30 seconds for half a day. Maybe you're not really looking to up your skills. But yeah, I am really seeing more and more conversations about upskilling and de-skilling in the exact same scenario. It's just how you're engaging with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. Ooh, Gareth is saying he doesn't see Photoshop and ChatGPT, so maybe
Well, I
those
think
aren't out yet.
Adobe is, though, I think.
Oh,
So
okay.
wouldn't that mean that creative, what do they call it? Creative Studio or whatever, including
Well,
Photoshop capabilities is in there.
we'll keep looking.
Yeah.
I know Canva is as well. And I would say I have the same frustration with Canva. Canva has an interface, and I want to be able to say, this is the effect I'm looking for. And right now, Canva is mostly saying, that's an interesting idea. No. Like, does this help document help you? No. I'm not asking for help documents. So Amazon is in talks to invest 10 billion in OpenAI. Is that because of these new moves into like more of a marketplace kind of thing,
I think
or is this just
it's more about the compute requirements that OpenAI has, and using the Amazon Trainium chips. That's the round
okay?
robin there, or the circuit that's going on, is they're going to invest in OpenAI. OpenAI is now going to invest much of that money into using the Trainium chips that Amazon has built, and so that is, you know, probably a small part of the total compute budget that OpenAI has, which is going to be
Right.
measured in the many hundreds of billions of dollars. And so NVIDIA is going to be a primary supplier still to OpenAI data centers, I'm sure. But all of the major model makers and inference providers are trying to find alternatives to NVIDIA chips. And one of
Right.
those is TPUs from Google, and the other one is Trainium chips from Amazon.
Okay. Doesn't this just
Oh,
sort
by
of
the way,
feel
on that news item that you have there, that may be the source of the new, you know, a little bird told me, floating rumor that the valuation for those investments for OpenAI is now at 750 billion, not
right?
500 billion as it was just months ago on their
Right.
most recent sort of disclosed valuation for such a private placement.
Right. And so looking at also the one, is it trillion? Is that what the next the illion thing will be?
That's right. The next valuation mark would be, so they went up 50% from 500 billion to 750 billion. Then they'll have to go up 25% again to become $1 trillion valuation company.
Right. And
And
they're
remember that,
already kind of
yeah.
looking at that.
Now, if you look at the investment circulars, there's, seemingly improbable, but probably believable for many analysts, estimations that NVIDIA's market capitalization will ultimately be not just the 4.5 or pushing upwards of 5 trillion at this point, but it'll be measured at, tens of trillions. Like, I saw one that said they can kind of forecast out to 2030 that its market cap should be somewhere in the vicinity of 25 to 30 trillion. Well, I
Wow.
hope that's true because I own some NVIDIA stock, but
Yeah.
but I don't believe it. I don't believe that we're going to see those kinds of valuations. Although Elon Musk would say that such valuations are appropriate for SpaceX and X and his network of companies.
Right. And I'm just going to pull this on. Gareth said you have to go to the apps and then you can get to Photoshop. You can't at it like custom GPT.
Yeah,
So
that's
hearing
that's
it
coming.
here,
That's coming soon. Yeah.
we're doing live testing in our audience. So thank you very much for watching and commenting, Gareth. Annie, what else you got?
Oh, okay. Well, here's Geek Corner. Geek Corner. So, a new research by a team of players at Google DeepMind came up with a new kind of reasoning technology, if you will, on the algorithmic side, called mixture of recursions. Now,
Oh, wow.
recursion refers to the idea that multiple passes can be run through the model for reasoning. So it'll create one output and then incorporate that output into the next recursive inference run. So this paper is called "Mixture of Recursions: Learning Dynamic Recursive Depths for Adaptive Token Level Computation." So they're working on different methods to scale language models and other models in the inference process. So let me read just quickly here from the abstract of this paper, and take notes because it's not easy. Scaling language models unlocks impressive capabilities, but the accompanying computational and memory demands make training and development expensive. Existing efficiency efforts typically target either parameter sharing or adaptive computation, leaving open the question of how to attain both. We introduced Mixture of Recursions, a unified framework that combines the two axes of efficiency inside a single recursive transformer. It uses a shared stack of layers across recursion steps to achieve parameter efficiency, while lightweight routers enable adaptive token level thinking by dynamically assigning different recursion depths to individual tokens. This allows MOR, mixture of recursions, to focus quadratic attention computation only among tokens still active at a given recursion depth. Okay, so if you followed all that, I'd have to read it 3 or 4 times to really grok it, but basically what's happening there is they're really starting to manipulate the movement of tokens across
Mm-hmm.
layers in the recursive process that recursion transformers pursue in order to accomplish sort of repetitive reasoning. It's like you rethink things probably thousands of times in your neuron structure when you're deliberating on something. And this is a way of making that process in a deep neural network that's a transformer, confine its attention to the things that are only active in order to conserve the energy and the thinking token costs of that process. So I thought that
Right.
was really, really cool what's happening over there at DeepMind. And so we have a new term, mixture of recursions to go along with mixture of agents and mixture of experts and so on.
That's very cool. It actually sort of goes like film strips, or when you were talking, I was like, ooh, it's like light bright, right? Like the little thing where you put the pegs in, they light up.
Oh yeah.
If those blink on and off in not all at the same time, your brain will fill in the ones that turned off, right? So you have the ability to still see it as a whole thing,
Mhm.
just like we don't see the individual strips of frames of film. We Our brain does that, so that's very cool.
Yeah.
And lower token usage is absolutely a thing. I'm seeing as we're moving into 2026 what people are focusing on, and it is in fact the Flash story compared to Pro story today. We've created a model that's hit a certain benchmark. Now we're working to create a model that is way less, way cheaper, still hits that benchmark, right? So we've done it with, we've done the full set. Now we're in a process of taking away, how much can we take away and still have it look like or work like the big one did? And I think that's really interesting. Although it also sort of feels like, hey, Gucci put this new thing out, and this is not Gucci, but almost Gucci, but it doesn't really matter for people who don't need it to be Gucci, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. What was that? 5 analogies?
It's head spinning, but it's working. It's making us work here.
Welcome to my brain. Good morning, everybody. So, do you have another thing that you want to get to?
Yeah, I have a few little things here to I've been saving them up. So
you.
one of them, this is a little old because it's actually from last week, but China is intensifying competition, as you know, and we've talked about the major players over there: Tencent, Alibaba, DeepSeek is definitely listed among the players who are making a splash in AI over there. And one of the major players in technology over there is Huawei. And Huawei is one of the big players in telephone infrastructure and so on. They're big in 5G, for example, and they're one of the companies that has developed the very pervasive, let's not say invasive, but pervasive surveillance technologies that happen over there. Well, they've established a new AI foundation model division. So it's called 2012 Laboratories, and it's going to intensify competition among the Chinese players doing AI, and they're all racing to develop artificial intelligence systems. And this new AI foundation model unit was created within Huawei's strategic research and development arm. So that's big R&D. This is a massive, very wealthy company. And so just important to note that another Chinese company is going to enter the fray.
Mm-hmm. So I was flying back from Canada to the US. I'm in the US again for another couple months. And the question that my seatmate asked first when I said I work in AI is China, are you worried about China? And is China going to take over? And I thought it was really interesting that that was the breakthrough question, because that hasn't always been the breakthrough question. But that does seem to be the conversation that people who are somewhat aware are questioning. How would you answer it, Andy?
I don't think that they have a meaningful advantage over the Western world's AI capabilities. In fact, I think many commentators would say we have a couple of months lead on the Chinese systems. And behind the scenes in companies like Palantir and others that are working on the more advanced strategic military kind of applications, I think that there's probable parity, and there are different approaches to it. Who knows how that would all play out on a battlefield, whether that's a commercial battlefield or whether that's a military battlefield. So I don't feel like that there's any one player out there who's in position to wipe out the others. It's not mutually assured destruction, if you will. Like no one system is so capable in excess of the other one that it can prevent the other systems from doing a lot of damage in the process. Right. You're on mute, Beth. Sorry.
The one thing that I keep coming back to as something that is hard for us to do quickly is how far in advance China is in terms of spinning up nuclear power plants to increase the power that they need to be able to do inference or more AI usage, right? Training, inference, more AI usage.
I think they do have advantages that way in terms of resources. But that's a function of their scale. I mean, think about it. We have 350 million roughly humans in the United States, and how many billion do they have over there? I don't know. Uh, of the 8+ billion on the planet, the majority, not the majority, but the largest shareholder of human resource is China.
As China, that's true. Welcome, Karl. We were just talking about the question that I got on the airplane yesterday about whether China's going to overtake us. You can comment on that if you want, or do you have a news story or something that you want to share?
Yeah, so in terms of China, there's always been the conversation about perception of AI, and I think like we in the West, how many, I don't know, there's so many studies about the perception that we have here that is AI going to be positive or negative for
Right.
economy, personal lives, and I think there's higher levels of pessimism versus in China, there's higher levels of this is going to be good for a society. And when you
and,
have
and, and higher levels of resistance to the
yeah,
implementation of
yeah,
AI, right?
yes. So if you have that plus there, I was listening to the All In podcast and they were talking about no, it wasn't the All In podcast. It was Kevin O'Leary talking about just in terms of government, right? You have like we're going to build a data center here. There is no stopping in China. Okay. And then here, and then
Right.
here, and then here, and then here, right? So that's happening. And if you have that, and their models they're not like the very, very bleeding edge, but I just saw, for example, WAN 2.6 audio video model was dropped today. That's pretty good. WAN's a pretty good model, right? So I think like you have that plus if society's generally more accepting, then one could argue they're already ahead. You would because the direction, the momentum is there versus here we're fighting a uphill battle. Even if right your current administration has signed whatever executive order statewide, it doesn't matter. There's still negative sentiment that we even see. Well, I see on the ground with our clients that like there is a negative resistance, and I also think it's how our news media covers it. There is something to be said about state-run media where it's not they're not looking for doom and gloom. They're just looking, we're just going to present the news in a government positive light, but we're going to present the news versus what's the most clickbait, rage bait headlines to get people to read and consume, which I think feeds into negative sentiment and, like things like that. So I just feel like they have the momentum and obviously there's a lot of factors why there's more pessimism here. I'm not saying there's a lot of optimistic people. I think people on this show are pretty optimistic about it, but there's a lot of people they're like, it's gonna take my job, it's gonna destroy it, it's stealing. Like there's a lot of reasons for it, and so there's those two things that play into it. So it was more of like a commentary on that.
I agree with those points, and I believe that societally, there's a better model over in China for the advancement of AI, but here it's divided. But the people who are really in power, the billionaire class, they're unrestrained and they have tremendous resources, and so AI is going to wash over us in a way that I don't think there's a tremendous lead still that's available to the sort of unified, integrated AI plus human society that China represents compared to what's happening over here. Because AI, sorry to say, doesn't really depend on humans too much.
Yeah, and I do think though a lot of people are asking, oh, I haven't seen the benefits of AI for me personally,
Oh, and
right?
I don't think they're going to. They're going
Well,
to,
no, right?
the benefits of AI are going to accrue to the users of AI
Yeah.
to a large degree, and
Yeah.
there's not a lot of use of AI other than as a companion chatbot at this point. So yeah, the I think, not to get gloomy, but I think that there's going to be a lot of pain associated with the advent of UI in society, AI.
It
Sorry,
would be
in society.
it would be curious to see how China's implementation of it is, because I do. It feels like when you see some of the stuff that they're doing, it really is. While you may disagree with the government, while you may disagree with the style, they are trying to do it for there's it's a perception for its citizens, and maybe that's leading into the positivities like, oh, our government is really all into AI, and they could kind of start seeing the benefits as a whole rather than here the companies are controlling it. And even there, yes, other companies controlling it, but like the perception is they're doing it for themselves, they're doing it to raise capital, whatever, to make themselves rich, versus there's a perception, oh, we're making it for the good of our people. So there's a, and I'm talking about perception. I don't know one
Yeah,
true
I
yes.
think that does exist there. I mean, it's foundational to their
Yes.
sort of
Well,
the concept of a communist state. Uh,
Right.
but there are corruptions and aberrations of communism that mean that there's simultaneously an oligarchic class that exists in China, I'm sure, just
I,
like here.
Oh,
And without diving too deep into all that, I'm not a student of international politics, so I don't really have much to say about it. But I admire at one level the tremendous advancements in the sort of the population economics for Chinese citizens, and that they have not suffered as a society in some oppressive way as a result of the communistic principles that we decry here in Western democracies. They seem to be a very happy and capable, population, and they're benefiting very much from the success of China on the global stage.
well, here's like simple example, right? I was just watching a YouTuber, daily life in China, whatever. So he goes into a convenience store, and you know how we pay with our phones? Some of us do. He was like, "Ah, you don't need to pay your phone. It just like wave my hand over the biometric scanner and it pays." Now, would that
mm,
apply here? No, probably not, because there's going to be heavy resistance on who is my data, like who controls that biometric. In China, everybody knows, the government would know, probably controls, but you've accepted it. And you're like, hey, you know what? I'll trade that freedom for being able to wave my hand so I can get whatever. I don't have to bring my phone, don't have to do anything. So it's sort of, I can kind of, you can just with that simple example, you can kind of see like what's accepted, what's not, right? So it's like, there's a lot of definitions of that type of freedom, right? One would see, oh, freedom to be able to leverage technology to its max, but I give a little bit of my freedom to get that said freedom. Versus here, it's like, hell no, my freedom is protecting my privacy data, but I'll pay with my credit card and it'll take a little bit longer. Two
Yeah,
right.
different perspectives.
yeah.
I'm not saying one is right over the other, but like to me, that's how I see kind of the two perspectives at it, right? Pick your freedom, pick your freedom, pick your limitation.
Well, and Andy, you were sort of referencing this, right? To a certain extent, AGI for the good of all doesn't need to be said out loud in China. Whether that is the what actually happens on the ground, that is supposed to be how things, how the benefits spread, right? In that kind of structure, and it does need to be said here. And maybe there are as many people who go maybe on both sides, but
So,
yeah,
so I
that's
just want to respond to Garrett here. It says probably take a minute to have someone stand next to you and steal it. Yes, it would. But in China, if you do it, the consequences are significantly more severe, right? They'll find you and you could disappear and then that's it, right? So it's like, will I do that or will I go to re-education camp or whatever they send you to? I don't know what they send you to. I'm like, um, right? So it's like, oh, here I may get a slap on, I may get 5 years, I may get community service. There, I may be gone for like
yeah,
I got right. So it's like I was like, well, like that works because of that system. No one's gonna be stealing nothing. Like they could steal, but like it's higher likely someone from China will steal here rather than someone with China will steal in China. That's how I
right.
kind of see
Oh,
it.
yeah, it's deflected thievery.
Yes.
Well, and the other piece that I think is interesting is the embargo or whatever it was, that we weren't selling the top chips that were made here, and
And still aren't. Yeah.
you can argue that they're getting there anyway, but it also seems very much to have created real innovation there, which is one of the ways that innovation happens, right? We want this, we can't get this, what else can we do?
Right. And in AI, there's research that shows that if you create a budget and starve a model of the, free flow of tokens,
Yep.
then it gets more efficient. It gets smarter as a result because it does something in the, depths of its neural network that takes advantage of capabilities, the innovation, if you will. Like you can't observe it happening, but you create a budget and things just work out better.
Right.
So deliberate starvation of tokens has shown positive results there. And yeah, just an
Anorexia and scarcity for the win. Like, I don't know. That doesn't sound like woohoo. Cool. So we're just about coming up on time, but is there other things that you want to talk about, Karl or Andy?
Did we talked about you? I'm sure you talked about the App Store.
Yeah.
The marketplace, as Andy corrected me. But what are you thinking about it?
Oh no, nothing. It was more of just reminded me of back in. You remember when social media was a big thing, 2010, 2011, and everybody had a Facebook page. So I remember there was bus ads of whatever business is now on Facebook. I'm on Facebook, something on Facebook, something, something, something. And it was more so it like, why would you be on Facebook? Why would I care? Like that was to me, it was like, why? But it was more to show that your brand is on it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm starting to see a lot of, and maybe it's just my feed, probably just my feed. In LinkedIn, there's a lot of, oh, we're on, our app is in it. So I'll give you an example. Clay is, I think, like a B2B software. Okay. So it's like,
yeah, it's a sales platform.
So my question is, why, outside of you showing that you're progressive and something, in that, why would your business be on Clay? Like, what would be the benefit? My question is, what would be the benefit of me going to ChatGPT, your version in there, versus me going to your website, right? And that same, to me, conversation comes all over again. It's like, what does your Facebook page do for you? Unless it's like a first mover thing, but maybe I would first have to know that you are on Facebook. I mean, ChatGPT, and I'd have to be a customer of yours, and I'd have to be using ChatGPT daily. Like, there's a lot of like have to be's. And does this also do you know? Does this include free users? I don't know.
I don't know, but wouldn't it? right? If the benefit is users staying on ChatGPT, and the benefit to the app provider is that they're being found, or people don't have to leave. But I think you're right. Like, don't you have things in your actual app that you want to showcase to people?
Maybe. And
Don't
like,
you want people going to your website or your app?
you would, but then the question is, there's like apps and connectors. So it's like, why would I use my connector when I have an app? Because there's a Gmail app and then a connector. So I'm like, okay. So here's the thing, would you use Gmail in ChatGPT? Or would you use
No.
Gmail? That's the question, right? It's like, why would I use? So it was just my thing. Is like, why would you use this to go to web? And it's more of, why would you? Not saying it's dumb. It's more of like, would you make that transition? So another example though would be Adobe. So I connected to Adobe. By the way, who's on this call? Who's on this? Anyway, so anyone here?
It's super secret. We're live streaming on YouTube.
If you don't have an Adobe account, what I did, and I don't know if this glitch still works, I don't have an actual paid account. So what I found was, when it tries to connect to the paid account, instead of you signing your login, I just closed the login, and it seemed to just connect me. And now I have Adobe, but I don't have an account. So now I can use Adobe, but I don't have an account. So I don't know if that's a glitch that just happened the first day.
Do you have to keep that tab open forever?
No, I closed it and I opened it and still connected, and I can still use it. And I was
All
like,
right, good.
oh, I found the glitch. And then, so that was for Acrobat, because I am not paying Adobe a dime to use this. There is no way I'm paying Adobe, just out of principle. I hate Adobe to pay it, especially their subscription cost to everything. So I thought it was just neat to see that glitch, and I don't know if that glitch happens to everything else.
Yeah,
It's just for Canadians.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what was Karl's VPN pointed to at that point in time is where we start to get
went to China first, and then
you used the China exploit. Okay, cool.
All right, so Gareth did our Photoshop in GPT test. It works kind of, and then maybe it doesn't really work, but we would love to hear from other folks if you are giving it a shot, because it sounds promising, but also it sounds, I mean, Adobe's gonna Adobe, right? That just seems like Microsoft's gonna Microsoft, Adobe's gonna Adobe. They have set not just reputations, but ways of doing business that aren't necessarily about their end user.
I did want to point to one thing today, if we have a little bit of time.
Yep.
So there was it's on Beta Kit. I posted in like the Daily AI Show channel, not the community, but like, so the Glenn Coates left. What is he? The vice president and head of core product at Shopify, is now leading OpenAI's app platform and tasked with turning ChatGPT into an operating system. He said, quoted, "We're going to find out what happens if you architect an OS ground up with a genius at its core that can use its apps just like you." So we've always talked about turning ChatGPT into an OS. I think now it's official, with somebody leading it to turn it into an actual OS. So it's interesting. And to respond to Greg, I'm not thinking about paying Microsoft. Then I'm actually excited for Elon Musk and his macro hard. I don't know if that's like a real thing, but when he put it out, I thought it was funny. I'm like, yes, I'd pay for macro hard. But anyway, so the Glenn Coates, OpenAI's new head of app platform, and turning it into an operating system. We'll see
Yeah.
probably in 8 months. I don't know, 8 months, 12 months. We'll see what that looks like. Maybe
We've
earlier.
seen it. Yeah, we've seen this coming. So, and yes, right? Like it's coming. We'll hear a lot of hype about it. Then there'll be nothing. Then we'll hear it's coming, and then we'll hear nothing, and then we'll hear some other stuff. Speaking of that, OpenAI didn't do a shipmas, but they did release some things. Did they do live stream where they talked about it? I haven't seen it.
I haven't
No.
seen that. No, this thing or anything like images and apps. I think they're taking the cue from Anthropic and just dropping it. That's a really good cue. It's like instead of you trying to live stream something, just here you go. And
Yeah.
you go. And Google's been doing the same thing. Here you go. They didn't even live stream Gemini 3, right? They just dropped it.
They live streamed for devs. I think there was an AMA or something like that.
Okay.
But it wasn't a big YouTube. Hey, everybody, we're going live.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So, thank you for spending your time with us this morning. We will be back tomorrow, bringing you what's happening overnight. So please go into our community, the Daily AI Show community.com, if you want to see some of the resources or want to have conversations about that Photoshop experiment that folks are doing. And we will be back tomorrow. We also have a newsletter, and you can get that at thedailyAIshow.com. All right. Thanks, everybody.